my my bedside table light on, and I might read a book. Reading doesn't hurt you, and it does give you that opportunity to nod off, which is, as I say, in my simple terms, the blue light stops our sleepy hormones kicking in, and books don't do that. So it's just one good reason to not allow our children to have that after a certain time, maybe after, I don't know what your bedtime routine might be, but maybe after 7 p.m. What Nathan did say was, well, what about, we asked him, what about television? He said that's the least evil, because it's so much bigger and it's not that close to your face. So TV, he would suggest not, but he said, come on, we all live in the world, we all want to watch television and watch the movie before we go to bed. So he's not so die-hard that he says don't watch television, but that's the least of the evils. So I was really blown away by that. It was a revelation to me because I didn't know all this science stuff, but once I'd heard it, it really made sense that your brain was being stimulated and not knowing that it was bedtime. So how to make it fit for you, and individuality is really important. All of our family contexts may be different. You may have a large family, you may have one child, you may be a solo parent, you may have grandparents living with you. You may be like me, have come to another country without a big extended family to support you. You make it fit for your family. So I can't give you a one-size-fits-all, because there isn't how to engage children in reading, because it's what works for you. And your child will lead it. Their personality is really crucial to how much reading and what kind of reading that you do with them. They may be a very quiet child who likes sitting, cozying up for a long time. They may be very boisterous or very sporty. You can't pin them down and you can't get them to come in. They might be shy, they might be bossy, they might take over the whole household when they've got a project and you're sick of the sight of this stuff because they're shoving it down your throat every minute of the day, and that's okay as well. But you are the experts on your children, so you make it fit for you and you make it fit for your family. You will know which resources you have available other than the library. Please use print. Use those flyers that come in your mailbox. Christmas is coming. Even if you don't celebrate it, there's lots to look at in those magazines and catalogues, and children get quite engaged about it. They start picking things out, or they start planning a shopping trip. It might be a birthday, not just a Christmas event. But it's so easy to give them those things to read and then just put them in the recycling, because it's still print, and print that is real and authentic, and that's really quite an important thing. So when you are driving around, they will look at things, they might ask questions, they will want to know road signs. That is all really important. I say that as a teacher. And even if it's McDonald's, most children will recognise that M, even if they're not allowed to eat lots of that food, even from being a toddler. My kids used to say Macadonald's. We still call it Macadonald's just because that's the way it came out, is that when they were babies. Anything that you can get them to read is really valuable. Your road sign, so they know where they live. That's quite an important one as well. Not their phone number, so that they kind of regurgitate it to strangers in the street, but knowing things like that, because that's important information that's part of their lives. What else? Work-life balance. Where do you fit it all in? As mother of 4 children, I found it very, very hard. People would say to me, but your children will learn to read because you're a teacher. Well, actually, I did my job as a parent, and I did not go home at night and teach my children to read, because they went to school for that. So what I did was be a mum to them and listen to them read their reading books they brought from school to home, mark off their little journals, talk to them about books. And because I love books anyway, it was a natural thing for me to buy them books, share books with them, take them to libraries. We've got, I don't know, about 4 or 5 bookcases up that high, and I try and cull it, but I just can't seem to. I still can't seem to cull it. So we've always had a lot of books around us, but having said that, that's not how I was brought up. So my family context was very different. I come from a working class background. My dad was a builder, my mum was a housewife. My dad didn't read anything except the newspaper, especially the sports section. My mum was grammar school educated, but Mills and Boon, really, you know, I was kind of pitching her books and going, what's this all about, when I was about 8 years old. I didn't find it very interesting, I have to say. But I wasn't brought up in that environment, so where did I come from? It was just something in me, as my own personality, that I was a bookworm. I was also quite tomboyish, so I would have books up in trees. I would have books, you know, in my back pocket. I would walk down the street reading a book. But I was also quite good at sport, and I was quite sociable and active. But there were some days in the holidays when I just wanted to lie on my bedroom floor on a rainy day and just read for 8 hours straight. So, although it is important to promote, what I'm saying is, if it's not your thing, your child it might be their thing. So don't feel guilty if you're not a bookworm. You read what you want to read, because it's more important that your children see you being completely real and authentic than putting on a show, if that makes sense. So engaging readers who are reluctant. And here I talk about the difference, and as teachers we distinguish between these two things. Learning to read and reading to learn. And learning to read is really what we do at school in the early years. We teach children how to decode the words, how to understand them, how to comprehend, and how to read fluently with expression and good pace and good understanding. And that's our job. And so what I want to say to you is, don't worry, that's not your job. Let the people who are paid to do that for you. You don't need to teach your children to read. You don't need to have them come to school when they're age 5 knowing their alphabet. They might want to do it anyway, but you don't have to. It's more important that they come to school seeing those books on a shelf or in a library or in a corner, and they want to open them because they're interested. That's more important. So leave the learning to read to the teachers. When they can read and they're then reading to learn, as I say, that's where you come in, because then you can talk to them. You can ask them why they're reading that, what is it about? Or why do you like that series so much? My son was in the Goosebumps, and we just had endless goosebumps. He's 24 now. We also had every single Guinness Book of Records going back from 1995, I think. We just went and bought the most recent one for my 15-year-old the other day. But the generations will read them on. Reading to learn is where you use your ability to read to find out or to enjoy, and that's what that's about. And that's where you can help your children. And you're doing that by taking part in the summer reading program. You're helping them read to learn either new things or just things that they are interested in. Or hooking them in. I use that phrase a lot, especially in the classroom. When we're writing, we hook the reader in. You've got to hook them in. And I also say at the end, teachers will be so grateful to you if you get them interested, because we call that reading behaviours. It's when children actively seek out books and want to share them. Ooh, excuse me. And they want to read. And I have very few reluctant readers in my class. I have to say, I have a lovely class of year 4 and 5s. Everybody likes to read. The key for me as a teacher is because I encourage them to read what they want to read. So if they want to read a comic, they want to read about rugby, they want to read about science, they can, and that's really crucial. There is absolutely no point in dishing out books to children. That's so old-fashioned, and it's not how learning happens nowadays. It is very individualised and very catered to those children. And we'll talk about whether it's too easy, too hard in a little while, because when you're just talking about mileage, you've got to get their noses in the book to get that reading mileage, and it can be too easy. That doesn't matter. If they're getting something out of it, then it's worthwhile. So I've made this little equation. So engagement plus mileage gives them these two abilities. And again, it's a bit teacher speak. I got this from a man called Murray Gadd, who is a literacy advisor, very wise person, and he coined, not my phrases, he coined these phrases. So if you get your children engaged and give them lots of opportunities to read, then they will do these two things. And we as teachers really appreciate them being able to do these two. They're kind of interconnecting skills. So they read like a writer. So when they read something, they recognise what the writer's done to make that good. For instance, we've been reading David Walliams all year, thanks to Rhonda. We're actually only just finished our third one. It's taken nearly 4 terms. So we've really taken our time. So as a teacher, I said, let's look at how David Walliams uses words to describe speaking. And we wrote, said is boring. We had a whole A3 piece of cardboard with the different ways that David Walliams described how his characters were speaking. Things like bellowed, shrieked, whispered, hollered, squawked, etc. And it just was a revelation to the children that you don't have to just say, he said. There are many other ways of describing the speech. So in doing that, although they were listening orally, we were reading that text as a writer, so we're looking for language features. Write like a reader then, so when they get to type or write, they remember how good authors put the words together to make it sound amazing. So they want to do the same. So instead of saying, and then he went to the park, and then he, and then he, and then he, and it gets a bit boring and repetitive, and say, remember, David Walliams doesn't say that. He doesn't use and then all the time. What other ways does David Walliams or any other author that they might be reading, how did they connect their sentences? How did they make their sentences interesting? So that's when they start to write like a reader. So you say to them, when you're writing it, read it back to yourself. Pretend that you're not yourself, you're a reader, somebody else. What do you think about that writing? Is it the best you can do? Is it amazing, or is it just ordinary? We always go for amazing. Oh, have we gone funny? Is that me? Did I press something? You're very quiet. You're very well behaved. Is that where I'm?
It's number 6.
Number 6. There you go. And then I want you on number 7. If I go. Sorry. You guys will talk amongst yourselves. And then just click again. There we go. See? Yeah. Okay. Right, I'll speed it up a bit. So, what kind of books, if you've got little learners? You need something that, first of all, they're going to want to look at. So let them choose whether they're into fairies, dinosaurs, tractors, cars, motorbikes, I don't know, all sorts of things that we think are very boring, I have to say. As a parent, I've been bored out of my skull by many things my children have chosen, but it's been their choice, so I've had to respect and accept that. But do look for things that are almost like sing-songy. They will remember, and then they will feel like they're reading it themselves. So, like Dr. Seuss, Harry McClary, things that rhyme or have a good rhythm. And even when you're in the car, sing to your children. Make silly rhymes about their names. That is part of their learning to read, is their understanding that language has that pattern. So it's part of their phonics, and phonics is about the beginning of words and the ending of words, and the ending is often the rhyming bit. So repetition as well, because children love then, they can sort of take over, because they know what's going to happen next, because it's sort of the same thing as on the page before, and it's easily predictable to them, and they like to feel success, so they like to know that they can maybe guess what the cat's going to do next, or where the man's going to drive his tractor on the next page. And so it's much more meaningful to them if they've chosen it as well. And keep it really simple so that they can start saying, oh, that looks like my name. Rhino, that's a the. You know, those very, very simple sight words that they first learn at school. You don't have to have them in there. They can choose some things that are quite hard. It's not that you shouldn't, I'll talk about it in a minute, but it's probably guide them to more easily understood and decodable words at first, because they might get frustrated and then throw the book down and not want to pick it up again. So when the little learners grow up and they can read, and they're reading to learn rather than learning to read, so they can decode and they can phrase and they can sound great and they can sound fantastic. I hear children reading all the time, and they're expressing themselves and they're pausing at the punctuation and they've got the great pace and they've got the volume, and ask them a question, they have not got a clue what they've just read to you. It's just perfect sounding, but they just don't know. So they haven't really been thinking about what they were reading, and they may not have even understood some of the words, even though they could say them. So it's really important that they have comprehension. These are the skills that teachers would work on, and I just put them in a simple way, so you can ask questions like, tell me about your story. Where did they go? Why were they going there, you know? And I won't go through them all, but it's just that conversation. They're actually really important skills if you're asking them to predict what might happen next, or what does that word mean? I say to my class, they always say, I don't know what it means. Look, it's not in the dictionary, they'll come. Okay, you give me $1 million if we find it. And I'll give you $1 million if it's not in the dictionary. I could have retired like 20 years ago if they all could give me $1 million, because I go, it's not in here. I can't, it's not, I've looked. And it's there. And get them to look up words, because it's really important that they get those dictionary skills and that they acknowledge, because nobody wants to be wrong, but they acknowledge that they don't know something, and that it's important that they do learn what the meaning of certain words in a text, because that word might be really crucial to the meaning of the story or the information that they're reading. Retelling it, and kids love to do that, to tell something in there. Gone are the days where we do boring old recounts. We don't have to do that anymore. We try to make them much more spiced up and interesting. And also book reviews. I do blurbs. Let's do a book blurb, you know. We could go on the internet, we could go on a book cover. It doesn't have to be boring. My class just love these Google Docs. They just absolutely adore them. And what is great about it is they can share those at home, so they can do some work with their siblings or with their parents or grandparents and share it with lots of people. So, I talked about if you're engaging them and they choose something that's a bit too difficult, and this is near the bottom, if you were to sort of discreetly count, if they were to make one mistake in every 10 words, then that's probably too hard for them to read. That's how we gauge it at school with an independent text. I'm not talking about a guided text, which we have as a teaching tool. I'm really talking about little children here. With big children, I've got some children who are 10 years old who aren't reading at that level. They can read whatever they want, because I just want them to get their nose in a book and to get something out of it, and to be able to talk about why they're reading that and share it with a buddy. So we do a lot of buddy reading. But with little children, if they're trying to read it, then 1 in 10 words mistakes is meaning that they are going to get frustrated very quickly. But do give them a go and don't step in and give them the word straight away. It's really frustrating for you because you're sitting there going, tractor, tractor, tractor. Give them some time because they might just get it. And don't cover up the pictures. No, you can't do that. That's their picture clue. They need that. They might go, oh, I can see a picture. Is it a tractor? Is it a trailer? It's a tractor. They didn't read it. They guessed it. That's okay. They've used the picture clue. Part of that learning to read is using those contextual visual aids. Make it really, really low stress time with your children. So it's not a learning time. It is not a reading lesson when they're with you. It's a fun time. It's relaxed, and if it's 5 minutes, fine. If it's 2 minutes, fine. I have spent so many years making up for that mistake, listening to my children read while we're on the way to school, and they've got to do their homework, listening to children read while I cook on the stove, and they sat there, and I haven't been giving them any attention whatsoever, except to say, yeah, okay, finished, good. Where's that thing I've got to sign? That is not valuable. That's just paying lip service to the whole thing. Give them 3 minutes of good quality time together. It's much more valuable than 10 or 15 minutes of you not really paying attention. And I know that because I've done it. Oh, and you don't have to always get them to read. And I know that Rhonda mentioned that. You can still, in your pack, note it down if you've read to them or you've taken turns. And I used to do that quite a lot after all the mistakes I made. When they wanted to read lots of stuff and it was kind of getting on for bedtime, I'd say, well, you read a page and I'll read a page. And that's how we got through the mileage, because then they took a back seat and they listened and we could get through a bit more. And sometimes they want to hear you read because what you're saying, you're showing them, you're modelling how to do it. So you might not like doing funny voices. They will say, no, that's not very good. He wouldn't say it like that. And then they'll tell you how it should be done. So it's really good for them to hear, but it's good for them to relax sometimes, and takes the pressure off them to read aloud to you or read the words together. And treat them as individuals. So you might have a very quick reader in the family and a very slow reader. Don't make comparisons. Never make comparisons, because it can be quite damaging for their relationship. The person who doesn't read as quickly is still reading, and that's just as valuable for them, and you must not break their confidence and just value everything that they do, because if they're willingly picking up a book, then that's just absolutely wonderful, and what you're giving them is gold when you're giving them your time. So I put bathtubs, tree houses and sand dunes, places you can read books. And you don't really want to take your devices to these places because they're expensive and sand and water are not very good for them. So, books are free to borrow. I'm sure the library are not wanting me to really promote sandy, soggy books, but I'm sure they'd prefer it if you brought a book and said, we're really sorry, we dropped it in the bath or in the paddling pool, or we took it to the beach, or the dog ate it because it was lying around and we didn't put it away safely. That actually happened to me recently in the classroom with a folder. The puppy dog chewed it. That's okay. It was in the home being shared. The dog just shared it as well. But devices are expensive and they've got their place. And well, I don't know. You've got this free resource. It's amazing. So, just listed all the different places that you can access apart from the summer reading program. Use your school libraries if you've got children who start school already. They're usually a fantastic source. At Milson we've got the most amazing library, and ours is always open before school, at morning tea and lunchtime, and even after school if any children want to pop in. We have librarians who man it at lunchtime, so there's another role for the children to play. And we have all sorts going on there. And some children go in to play chess. just making the library a place that they want to be part of, and it's not a tipping toe around. No, it's certainly not a place for ball games or running around, but it's not big enough, but it's still a vibrant, thriving place, and there's so many in our wonderful community here that we have a lot on offer. And I do think that if you're going to start the reading program, success will just grow because you've already made that big commitment of you're going to give some time. You're here, giving up your evening, which is amazing. It's such a busy time of the year, so I really appreciate and acknowledge that. And there's something for everyone. Every child involved can find something for themselves, and it's at your own pace and level. Some will go very quickly, some will go slowly, and then it'll suddenly accelerate, and that's all right. Just make it work for your family. And cozy reading, which is what I called my presentation last year. Cozy reading is so important, but being together. Now, you might not be a cuddly family, you might not be touchy-feely. That's not what I mean. You can be sitting, with your child on the floor. You can hear them. You don't have to be physically like this. It's nice if you do that. It's amazing if you can. It is a great feeling to snuggle with your child and have that relationship and that warmth. But you don't have to. And the rules, these are just my rules, that you shouldn't be stressed. Let the children lead the way, make the choices of what they're reading, and you will enjoy some of what they read. And this lady here was telling me how much her son reads. And yes, sometimes you will get up to here and think, oh no, not another book. I just can't deal with anymore. You just got to suck it up, I'm afraid, because it goes so quickly. Their childhood is just over in what feels like a blink of an eye, and you just have to do it. You do what you do, because we're parents, and that's what we do. You kind of have to sacrifice TV sometimes, or turn the music off in the car and listen to them going on and on about their favourite books and what they're going to do next and all of that. But it's really rewarding. And then they'll ask you what you're reading, and if you're a reader, you can kind of summarise sometimes, depending on what you're reading. And the wider family can join in. And I think that's just lovely when you've got older siblings who are even grown up, that they might want to do that for you. Aunties, uncles, grandparents, neighbours, if you've got close neighbours. Use everybody who's willing. And a lot of our older relatives, they're just waiting to be asked. They'd love to. And they don't have to worry. They're not being teachers. They're just being caring adults who maybe want to spend some time listening or reading to or reading with. You don't have to be an expert at all. And just enjoy it. And if it's ever not positive, then stop, because you need to just give that up for the time being and go back to it another time. I put a little bit more researchy type stuff in there because I'd heard about habits and how long it takes to form habits, and there's things that I cannot do if I only do them like once every 12 months. My husband will say, but I've showed you how many months? I'm like, I know, but I don't do it every day. So I can't think of what I'm supposed to remember, but habits need forming, and I think if your child is a bit reluctant, then encourage them to be more willing readers and give them that motivation by having the choice, and then they will form a habit. So, read willingly and often, and that will form a habit. Where I think that's why I read so much now, because I wanted to read as a child, a little girl, and I couldn't get enough. And it's just continued throughout my life. So, yeah, I suppose my habits have influenced my children's habits and my husband. Although my husband is mildly dyslexic, and so he did find it as a child much harder to read huge amounts. He now reads a lot, but he did struggle. So, I did wonder when we had children whether the gene pool was going to be affected. It wasn't. However, when my youngest son turned 6 the week we came to New Zealand, and he had his 6-year net, if anybody knows what one of those is, it's a check-up in school, and he couldn't understand the Kiwi accent at all, so he failed completely, failed this test. I was like, you know, you have a say what moment. She's like, oh, he's failed. The teacher, he's failed his 6-year net. I think, what? Oh, he's fine when he's in England. What's going on? He's only been in the country a week and he's failing. Anyway, he's 15 now and he's doing okay. He's doing fine. It's also, there can be things that can affect your children's learning, like moving to another country, like moving to another town, like moving to another house, like their dog dying, like baby being born. Lots of things can affect learning. As long as you make it a positive thing that you might want to do. I'm not saying you've all got to go and borrow a book or whatever. You don't. Just don't make it a negative. So even if you really don't want to read, say it honestly. Say, I'm not much of a reader, but I like that you do. Maybe you can tell me about your books, and maybe I want to hear them. I want to read them with you. Just be really honest. I have to say, I don't know if I should say that on camera, really hated trying to read Harry Potter. I couldn't get into it at all. Watched the movies, loved the movies, but couldn't read Harry Potter to save my life, which was a big disappointment, but my children had to just do it themselves because I just couldn't. I couldn't get into it. Bet you're thinking, phew, get this one off the stage. So I just wanted to give you some, not even tips, you're probably all doing the right thing. It was just sharing my experiences more than giving advice. They do grow up really quickly. You know, speaking as a parent of a 25-year-old, I just do not know where the time has gone. Make the most, and do so. If you are a bit snuggly, if you do like that kind of thing, you can't snuggle an iPad. You can snuggle your children with a book, and books are just so worthwhile sharing. And you know, just enjoy your summer. I hope you have a really successful time with your children, and hope that they have a lovely time. And yeah, don't forget, books can get soggy. We don't mind. Thank you.